Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon to a few out there. It is the Earth Master back here on this Thursday, November 2nd, 2023. It's about 11:26 a.m. here, California time. Latest earthquake activity here on the globe shows a 2.9 over here around the Turkey area, it looks like. Also 2.5 in the red flag around the Mediterranean. Did see a little bit of activity stirring up overnight, including a 5-pointer here in the Philippines region just before midnight, 5.7 to be exact, about 20 kilometers deep, just over here around the Philippine Sea. This activity up here comes following the 6.1 earthquake down into the Indonesia Islands area from yesterday. But aside from that, not a whole lot of larger scale movement taking place there overnight. Here in the West Coast, a little bit of movement back prior to the Cascadia subduction zone. Of course, we got this sleeping giant all wound up. Been 323 years since the last major rupture out here across the Cascadia subduction zone, which does extend all the way up here into the Queen Charlotte Sound area. This little earthquake striking about 8 o'clock this morning, a 3.3, 7.9 kilometers deep. And again, that's just prior to the Cascadia, the southern end of the Cascadia megathrust area. A little bit of movement throughout the Idaho area as well, with the looks like a couple 2s and 3s up there in the overnight time period. I'll turn off my phone here so I don't get interference going on. West Coast activity. Let's see what we got for 2.5 and above here. Not a whole lot. As you can see, it pretty much makes all the earthquakes disappear off the map there. A little bit of activity across Idaho, or Utah, Richfield, Utah, 3.2 coming in this morning, 11 kilometers deep. So aside from that, mostly microquake activity here across the southern portion of the state today. One little earthquake near Loma Linda, 1.2 in the last hour. The southern branch of the San Andreas Fault remains sleeping and also remains locked. Let's see, into Texas, getting a couple different zones out here. Oil fields getting hit, to be exact. We could check out any of these, and you'll see that the majority of these are taking place near quite a few oil fields and pumping operations out here and wastewater disposal facilities. That's what these little ponds are out here across the desert of Texas. That's just one little area. If we were to go over here outside of this region here near Stanton, Texas, it looks like there's also a wealth of oil fields and pumping operations scattered out here as well, where some of the earthquake activity is striking. And I believe this area down here, where we're just seeing one more earthquake in the last hour, has quite a few oil fields as well. Although, hard to tell on this one. I really don't see anything. Well, there's a couple right here within the vicinity. Maybe there's some new pumping operations up here, not listed yet on the map. But there's definitely some oil fields out here. As you can see, all the names written here on the map. All right, backing out of here, spotty activity across Oklahoma. Really not seeing anything major going on across the Middle America Trench or the Caribbean Plate. Got a handful of earthquakes down here from yesterday into the Chile region. The latest one, though, kicking off this morning, a 4.7, right at this fracture boundary here, just off the coast here of the Chile region, 4.7, 15 kilometers deep. There's some activity stirring up in the South Sandwich Trench there from yesterday. That's going to be a 5.0. Up into the Alaska region here, generally small microquake activity for the most part. A couple 2s and 3s out here across the area of the Aleutian Trench. But overall, things fairly calm up there for the most part in the Aleutian Trench area. Big Island of Hawaii, no further return of earthquake activity here across the Kilauea volcano. Things are just kind of staying pretty steady right now. Let's go ahead and check out the latest information here from the HVO site, which does not show that it's been updated yet. So we can just go ahead and double check that ourselves with the data. See if we got anything that might be of worthy value in mentioning. Still seeing downturn. A lot of downward inflation going on here at the summit area. Here's the past 30 days, still showing that downward trend. Now, it looks like we're getting close to that time period where we could see things kick back up, according to some of these graphs here. But I noticed this past pattern has not followed the uptrend as the previous couple inflation patterns here. So it's possible we could be just winding down. Maybe that magma is just going to sit down there below the surface for a little while until we get a little further influx of magma into the area. Because right now it doesn't look like we're into any impending eruption there across the Kilauea volcano, but we'll continue to watch that. The latest seismograph stations here, well, that's one tilt meter. Let me zoom in here a little bit and find a working seismograph station. Looks pretty quiet here. Aside from this little reading here at the bottom in the last half hour, it looks like. I'm not for sure what that is. It almost looks like magma. Fluid movement. You guys see that? So we'll have to see. Let me check out some of the webcams here and see what we got. Really don't see anything at the surface levels there of lava, of the crater lake area, lava lake area. It is still showing some volcanic gases out here, but that's about it. I'm not seeing any visible lava at the surface. But that's an interesting signature. We'll have to see what they see what the update states here a little bit later. All right, backing out of here, let's see what else we got. Not a whole lot going on through the Fiji area. Most of this, well, one from yesterday, one from today, 4.5. Both of these pretty deep, so we're getting a return of deeper movement quakes here. Should continue to add strain across the plate boundary here in areas that may not have been hit yet. A lot of it has been following this plate boundary here as far as the momentum goes. That general stress tends to build up here in this area. Here is the region of interest. We got the Tonga Trench here. Notice these arrows pointing towards the northwest. That's the general momentum of the strain that accumulates here across the plate boundary, and that does interact and combine with the strain from other plates here across the area that are pointing into this general direction. That's why it's always so active here across the Indonesia region. Just a huge cluster of plate tectonics taking place here on any given day. And that's why we always see a lot of earthquake activity here. But we haven't really seen too much movement here specifically around, well, the Solomon Islands here. Let's go ahead and look at the last 7 days. See what we got here along this plate boundary. We did see a 5.5 and a 4.5. But there's a couple areas here just to the west of Solomon Islands that may be showing some uptick here soon, I believe, because these seismic gap zones kind of give us a good indicator of where some strain could be building and where we should see some activity fill in. We'll continue to watch this little gap area in between about Papua New Guinea and Solomon Islands right here around the Solomon Sea for some movement soon. Down here in New Zealand area, still watching that, although we're not seeing any major movement. Looks like we're seeing a couple threes there, including one off the plate boundary. Let me go double check that, see what we have going on here for the New Zealand area. There's that one little earthquake. These are from yesterday. Bring up all magnitudes here. 3.4, that's just off the North Island coast here. 77 kilometers deep. A couple other smaller quakes in there as well. Check out the earthquake drums and see what we have for any, maybe some swarming going on. I don't know. Let's take a look here and see. There's a handful of earthquakes, mainly around North Island on the graph here. Those are some 2s and 3s and some smaller earthquakes, but I'm not seeing anything of noteworthy value out here to mention. But we'll continue to watch New Zealand as it does sit along that plate boundary here that's seen quite a bit of movement north and south of it here across the divergent zones in recent days. Far as the areas across the Middle East and Mediterranean, looks roughly about the same as it did last night. Some 2s and 3s out there, excuse me. We do have a 5.4 in the Atlantic area. Divergent boundary activity, it looks like, right out here. USGS reporting this as a 4.9 though, so quite the downgrade compared to the EMSC model. It's been a little while though since we've seen any major uptick going on out here. It's all been across the Western Pacific and most of these other fault systems out here across the South America region, plate boundaries, I should say. But we'll continue to watch this and see how it plays out today. Space weather activity, that's another one that's been kind of interesting here. Been up and down in terms of solar flare and lack of solar flare. We do have a coronal hole that's looking pretty fancy here across the center disk and southern hemisphere of the sun. That is rotating here into view. That should be directed at Earth in the coming days, although the last one that we had was pretty much centered directly center disk here facing Earth, and that didn't amplify anything in terms of space weather here on this planet. But we'll continue to watch that because a lot of times high-speed solar wind and charged particles flow out of this coronal hole and do affect the 3-day at times. But for now, things look pretty calm across the board in terms of that activity. Flaring activity looks like it has calmed back down as well. Here is the last 3 days of solar flare activity. Looks like we did see a little M flare peak up. I believe that was yesterday. But we're still not as active as I'd like to see it. Let's go ahead and look at the sunspot regions here and see what we have. Still getting this area down here on the southwestern quadrant of the sun that does show some potential. But it's just sitting there, really not gaining any momentum there in terms of complexity. And the rest of the sunspot regions here look like they have died off. Same with this newer sunspot region that was coming around the eastern limb. That looks like it's stabilized. There's a couple other regions way out there that we'll continue to watch, maybe for some signs of activity in the solar flare department. But right now, overall threat, 85% chance for a C flare, M flare at 35, X flare around 5% chance or so. And let's hope this picks up. It's supposed to be heading into solar maximum here. The latest experimental solar cycle 25 progression chart. This is the older one. The newer one states that it's going to maximize sometime in 2024 compared to, well, the original forecast in June 2025. So we'll see if this peaks out. It looks like it's just dying down, though, to me. Maybe that was it. Maybe that was the peak of the solar cycle 25. Who knows? All right, weather outlook here. Climate Prediction Center. I always like to check these out here. This gives us a good indicator of what to expect here in the 6 to 10 day forecast. It'll be roughly around November 7th to November 11th here. It does show some warming conditions out here across portions of the south. Some cooler air dipping down into the Great Lakes area. Here is the precipitation outlook here for that same period. Looks like some storminess coming in here to the west coast, and that is fine by me. These are above average conditions here, and the probability is quite high out here across Northern California, so I'm welcoming that with open arms. And looks like some activity out there across the eastern portion of the country as well, below normal precipitation across the Texas and the desert southwest area. Let's go ahead and check out this weather model. We do have some rain and snow into the Pacific Northwest. That's holding off, though, for Northern California. Not a whole lot expected here. Maybe a few sprinkles. It's not until later during that time period I just showed you that we'll see weather conditions pick up here across the West Coast, bringing some rain and some snow to the general area. We'll have to watch this and see if it really picks up or not. We are getting into our rain season here where we should see, precipitation kicking up here, considering it's an El Nino year as well. We'll definitely watch for that weather pattern to kick in here hopefully soon. Tremor map from last night, 126 epicenters there around the Cascadia subduction zone, Oregon and Northern California. But aside from that, we're still looking at quiet conditions compared to the years past. Guys, notice that this little trend here, we were peaking up pretty good there over the past few years. Now we're just returning back to some quiet conditions along the Cascadia. Volcano hazards out here. We'll give a quick glance at the Mount St. Helens area, since that's been a little topic here recently with some earthquake activity. I don't think they're having too much earthquake activity right now, but we'll go ahead and chime in, see what we have here across the area. This seismograph station here looks pretty calm. These are wind events up there coming into the area. I can tell just the way they look. But for the most part, earthquake activity, a couple very small spikes, but doesn't look like too much going on there across the Mount St. Helens area. And this is gas emission charts. Shows carbon dioxide, CO2, H2S ratio, sulfur dioxide, all the good stuff that has to do around volcanoes. Looks pretty calm. Not a whole lot of elevated activity. If this is going to be elevated and we see GPS coordinates and inflation going on, then I would say, hey, that's getting ready to pop. But I don't think that's the case here. We may be getting some magma charging below the surface, or down there around 5-6 kilometers deep or so. But who knows when or if that will head towards the surface area. It may take a long time. We'll have to watch that for sure. Alrighty, guys. Have a good one. It is Thursday. I was going to say Friday, but it's not quite there. Friday is tomorrow. So make it through today and then pretty much smooth sailing towards the weekend. Look at the live seismograph stations here. Pretty calm, pretty quiet. Not a whole lot going on. It's been a little while since we've seen any major large-scale movement. I mean, obviously we've seen some 6s out here, Fiji area, South America region here recently, but goodness, I don't know. When was our last, I'm kind of curious to see when our last 7.0 earthquake was. It's been a little while, right? I'm just going to go back here a year and see what we got for the world. Seems like things are just quiet right now. This is a past year of 7.0. Well, this goes back to this time last year. And our last 7-pointer is Indonesia Islands area. We did see that 7.2 back in July up into the Aleutian Trench area. But goodness, that's about it. No 8-pointers so far this year. You guys see that? No 8-pointers. They don't occur every year. But almost seems like things are a little on the weak side in terms of plate dynamics out here. But, of course, no 9-pointers. Our last 9-pointer, when was that? That was back in 2011, right? The Japan earthquake up here. It's been over 10 years, definitely. Who knows? 9-pointers are actually pretty rare, but when they do kick up, goodness, they create quite a bit of havoc. Just have to watch and see how the rest of this year plays out. Have a good one, folks. Notice this area up here. Nothing. Nada. Zip zero going on. I still think the Kuril Kamchatka is well overdue here for some major earthquake activity. We'll catch you guys back here a little bit later on this evening, folks. Take care.